The sun has barely risen, and dew is still collected on the grass. But this tortoise is eager to begin its day. Most people know that tortoises hibernate for several months of the colder part of the year. But how does a pet tortoise spend its time in the British summer? And not just any summer, the summer of 2020, the year that coronavirus took a hold on the world. Join us on this adventure as we discover the Horsfield Tortoise's behaviours, its life history, and we ask what the future of this species holds as we take a journey through summer with the Horsfield Tortoise. The bulk of a Horsfield tortoise's diet should be a variety of high fibre, broad, leafy greens such as dandelions and clover. Over the years I've spread lots of dandelion seeds all over this lawn to create a good environment where they can just graze on the dandelions and other weeds which grow naturally whenever they like. Dandelions are a favourite with tortoises, although they do contain a high amount of oxalates which prevent calcium becoming available, so they should only be fed as part of a varied diet. To eat the leaves, they'll use the muscles in their neck to pull their head back to tear off the leaf, whilst often grabbing the leaf that's on the ground with their front claw. Just like that. So that when they pull their head back, the leaf stays on the floor whilst the bit that's in their mouth, that's cut off with their sharp beak, can be eaten and digested. The Horsfield tortoise can also eat many different flowers, such as the dandelion flower, rose petals, marigolds, and even pansies. Very common British flowers. It looks like Herbie, the male tortoise, is on the search for something sweeter. How about this strawberry? No. Too high. They should eat fruit sparingly, around once or twice a week. In the wild, they wouldn't normally come across fruit in the deserts and the scrublands, and so it makes no sense to feed them too much fruit in captivity. Excess fruit can cause problems, including diarrhoea, liver ulcers, parasites, and there have been cases of death. The search continues. How about this hanging object? No. It's just a piece of soil hanging from where a strawberry should be. This is all very tiring work. Perhaps something ground level will be easier to eat. Yes, just what he was after. An unripened strawberry. But why does eating too much fruit cause so many issues? These problems occur because the sugar that is ingested in fruit is fermented at a faster rate than the sugar in leafy greens. This creates a high level of endotoxins, which disturbs the normal gut flora of a tortoise. A strawberry or a slice of apple then should just be considered a sweet treat. On a wet and cold day like today, the tortoises will spend most of their time in the box, sheltering from the wind and the rain, and ensuring that their temperature remains optimal. They are native to places like China and Russia, where temperatures can drop well below zero, And so the British weather and the British temperatures are of no real challenge to the Horsfield tortoise. The Russian steppes, where the Horsfield tortoise can be natively found, has average temperatures ranging from 21 to 23 degrees Celsius in July, similar to the UK. This got me thinking though, just what is the range of the body temperature of a Horsfield tortoise here in the UK across a typical day and night? Well, to find out, I'm going to use a thermal imaging camera. The following day brought calm after the storm, and it was the perfect time to put my experiment to the test. Today's been quite a warm day, highs of 25 degrees, so it'll be interesting to see what temperature the tortoises are right now, just as the sun has gone down, and what temperature they will be throughout the night. Yes, I will be staying in that tent so that we can compare the temperature of a cold-blooded reptile against a warm-blooded mammal. Just after 7 o'clock, I took the first temperatures. So we've just found out that the temperature of the tortoises is around 23-24 degrees. I'm around 35 degrees. Obviously, the human body should be at a slightly higher temperature, 36-37 degrees, but it's not measuring my core temperature, it's measuring my surface temperature, which will be really interesting to see how my surface temperature is maintained around 34-35 degrees, whilst the Horsfield tortoises should decrease as we go through the night. I was extremely tired at 3 AM, but I managed to capture a few seconds of my temperature, which had remained constant. My tiredness could be heard in my voice.
13, 12, 13 there. And 13, 12.
The temperature of the tortoises had dropped dramatically, so far confirming my experiment predictions. As the sun rose, the creatures of the garden eagerly rose. All creatures except one.
Good morning. It has just gone past 8 o'clock. I am still pretty much asleep, but the sun is up, and I'm just going to see my temperature now, and the tortoise's temperature. Has the tortoise now increased now that the sun has come up and been shining on the box? Are they still maintaining that same low temperature in the early teens? We're about to find out.
My temperature, as predicted, hadn't changed, whereas the sun was already warming up the tortoises again to give them energy to start their days. Herbie was almost 30 degrees, whilst Flash, who had been chilling out on the shaded porch, was 18 degrees, but steadily warming up further. The sun continued to blaze down, and the tortoises began to bask. Heat is vital to ensure that healthy growth and digestion can take place. Tortoises are therefore completely reliant on the environment for maintaining an appropriate temperature and must therefore bask in the sun to warm their blood up. The tortoises sense the environment, process this environmental information, and act accordingly, either by staying inside or burrowing when it's too cold, or coming out to bask in the sun when the body needs warming up. However, they will also burrow when it gets too hot. In the wild, Horsfield tortoises may burrow for several months when it becomes too warm. This is called aestivation. It is similar to hibernation, as it is a state of dormancy, only during the summer, rather than the winter. As Flash burrowed herself away, it became apparent that Herbie had hid himself too. but his whereabouts was unclear. So there is some bad news. One of the tortoises, Herbie, has gone missing. He's been gone missing for a few days now. We don't know where he is. My family and I looked for him all around our garden and our neighbours' gardens for hours each day, but we couldn't see him anywhere. I've spotted him previously hiding under hedges and climbing the perimeter of his outdoor area. I thought the boundaries were tall enough, but obviously they weren't. He's only ever met failure when climbing them before. So that is the update. It's a blow to obviously myself. I care about the tortoise. It's a bigger blow to him. I hope he's safe. They are versatile. Hopefully he can look after himself for a bit, and maybe we'll see him again. But it's also a blow to the documentary. Herbie is microchipped, and that was our only hope. Filming had to carry on without him. The most obvious feature of any tortoise is the shell. The shell is there to protect itself against what would be predators. The shell has remained largely unaltered despite 200 million years of evolution. And the shell is basically an extension of the rib cage, but on the outside of the body rather than the inside of the body, like in most other vertebrates. If tortoises do not get enough UV rays from the sun, they can develop a soft shell known as metabolic bone disease. Obviously having a soft shell is a problem for tortoises because in the wild the shell is there to protect themselves from predators or from falling rocks, so it's really important that they do get enough UV. The top of the shell, the carapace, should be smooth, feel firm to touch and have no obvious bumps or signs of injury. I was hoping Herbie would be protected by his shell, particularly in the unpredictable British summer weather. News of his whereabouts came much sooner than expected. Herbie has been found, he's been handed in at a vet's in Chesterfield, and so we're now on our way to go and collect him. Herbie is back. Herbie is back. The highs and lows of keeping a pet tortoise. Escape artists. However, they are very hardy creatures, as we have found out throughout this documentary. They can survive the cold temperatures of the night, they can survive the heat of the day, and they can survive what became 6 days out in the wild. I was able to trace Anne, the woman who rescued Herbie, to discover more about how he was found.
Hello, is that Anne?
It is. Is that Daniel?
It is Daniel, yes. I believe you found our tortoise last week.
Yes, it was quite an adventure for us, to be honest, after lockdown.
She told me more about what he was up to when he was found.
He was trotting across the road quite happily, so we rescued him, traffic moved on.
She told me she gave him to a friend who kept tortoises, who then gave him to the vets at Pets at Home.
We actually lost him the Friday before, so that was 6 days that we lost him. Yeah.
My God! Well, hopefully he'll have enjoyed his adventure and he'll stay put this time.
Okay, thank you, and I'm glad you enjoyed your adventure.
Yeah, it was lovely.
Good.
Remember me to him.
Of course. Thanks very much anyway.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, bye. Thank you. Wow. Amazing. He would have travelled around half a kilometre down the road, through trees, through bushes, and he was found crossing the road holding up traffic. That is an incredible feat for him, and an incredible that we got him back. Unbelievable.
As Herbie walked into the evening sun, he spotted Flash, who had just appeared from her burrow. They say absence makes the heart grow fonder. This was clear to see. Courtship occurs during the spring and the summer. Male and female tortoises can be aggressive, but the female will usually give in eventually. The male circles the female whilst nodding his head and biting her legs at the edges of her carapace. He wears her down, attempting to trap her so that she can be mounted. The most noise you will hear from a tortoise is during mating. It is a jaw-dropping affair filled with hissing, grunting, wheezing and squeaking. Horsfield tortoises can take 10 years to reach sexual maturity. Herbie has only just turned 10. He may have been waiting for this moment for a while. Before it's really begun, it's already over. Herbie tries to mount again, but Flash is not allowing it. She shoves him, bites him, and leaves him in his tracks. "13-year-old Flash has never laid eggs, but if she was going to, she would make her way to a quiet corner of the garden. Here, she will begin to dig, but only a few inches deep this time. In this hole, she will lay 2 to 6 eggs. Females will lay 2 to 3 batches in total at 2-week intervals. That's quite a lot of eggs. If temperatures are consistently in the mid-20s and no possible predators can get to them and they are out of the rain, then Horsfield tortoise eggs can lay naturally. However, this is not practical in Britain, and so an incubator is usually used. There are morphological differences between the male and the female tortoise. The main way to identify the male and the female is that the male has a long tail and is smaller than the female, whereas the female has a short, stubby tail and is usually bigger. Over the course of filming, I've been handling these tortoises a lot, and it's really boosted my mood during lockdown and during this coronavirus pandemic. And I thought I'd offer the opportunity for young children to handle the tortoises, as a chance for them to get in touch with nature, to see if the experience boosts their moods too. The tortoise handling experience began with a wash. It is recommended that tortoises in captivity are washed once a week to help hydrate them and to help them to pass waste.
I think he's thoroughly enjoyed it, really. I think he's been surprised that he could get as close to a pet and interact with it a little bit. Yeah, it's something new to him, I think. Normally you see cats and dogs and things like that, and there's a few people who have got turtles, or not turtles, tortoises, and I don't think he's come across anybody who's got one yet. So yeah, it's a new experience for him.
After they had had a wash, it was feeding time, or at least an attempt to feed them anyway.
It was really fun. Really fun. Just being around animals and nature makes me happy, so I think that it'll make other people happy. It's fun seeing him trying to walk in midair. Yeah, I'm flying.
They've never experienced tortoises before, and I think it's something very, unique, isn't it?
Yeah.
Kind of wish they were a little bit more gentle.
I think they think they're protected in armour because of the shell, so they could just be like...
But I'm sure we're going to be talking about this for a while.
As I like to call it, the tortoises. Feeding them is my favourite bit. Probably washing it, definitely. Feeding him. I like feeding the tortoise. It's quite fun, feeding them. And watching them crawl around.
Yeah, it certainly helps. I think whether or not it's just solely down because it's pandemic time, I don't think that really matters. I think any time is a good time for children to interact with animals and things.
The interaction with others or animals isn't there. That's the bit I think that's been missing during lockdown. We've been very together and just us. And this is quite nice for them to be able to ask you different things and talk about different things and to see the animals and play with the animals as well.
I love you guys.
So did you guys enjoy it? Was it fun?
Put your hands up if you enjoyed holding tortoises today. Oh yeah.
Tortoise time.
This tortoise handling experience would never have been able to take place if Horsfield tortoises were only kept in their native homelands. I started to question if keeping a pet Horsfield tortoise is a morally acceptable practice. To help me answer this question, I contacted Lucy Olivia Smith, a former employee for Ecological Institute Berlin. She published a paper which discusses the legal and illegal trade of Horsfield tortoises. In your paper, you started to mention some of the issues that arise from the illegal trade of Horsfield tortoises. Could you just briefly explain what some of those are?
Well, I think that you have kind of a slow extinction of a species that we don't understand so well, that we don't have that much data on, and then this transition of a species that is becoming more and more threatened in its original habitat and more prevalent in a consumer country. As you mentioned, it's not a particularly iconic species. And so it kind of just fades in its existence and is a victim of this sort of weird capitalist exploitative society that we live in.
Yeah, and you mentioned there it's not particularly a species such as the orangutan or the polar bear which gets such media attention. Why does a Horsfield tortoise not get that media attention or political attention?
Well, I mean, it's not alone. I would say that the majority of species that are being illegally traded are more likely to also not have the situation be communicated. They're not iconic. And so if we're going to talk about addressing illegal wildlife trade, it has to take into consideration that the majority of species that are victim of this are not well known. They're not particularly they don't have big PR campaigns behind them, and and they might be considered not that important by people because of this, but that's not the case.
And you mentioned they might not have the biggest impact on their environment. They just might not affect the ecosystem too much. But do you think that means, oh, it's okay to take them out of the environment then, or do we just leave it as it is?
No, I mean, I don't think that, I mean, ecosystems are really complex systems, and you have to assume that all the different plants and animals have some sort of contribution that maybe we haven't fully understood.
And obviously, given the current climate with the coronavirus pandemic, I think we've seen how the trade of animals and the sale of wild animals can have global detrimental consequences. Would you say this is another reason why, obviously, the pangolin, the bat, potentially cause the coronavirus? It's another reason why we should just have a blanket ban on the trade of wild animals.
Well, I mean, I thought it was really interesting that you put this in one of your questions, because I don't necessarily think that the possibility of a pandemic should mean that no animals be traded, but I am very interested in this kind of like unpredictable event that perhaps was powerful enough to change the perception of people about how dangerous it is to consume wild animals or trade them.
Do you think it is wrong to keep a tortoise as a pet?
As I got older, I became more and more critical of having pets. And when I grew up, I loved animals. It was a huge part of like learning about responsibility. And we had also iguanas and like all sorts of things. But as I've gotten older, it doesn't feel, like most of these pets don't have a happy ending. They don't have someone that cares for them throughout their entire life in a way that meets their needs. Most of the time it's downright cruel what the life that they live. And so like, I think as an adult, I've started to be more critical of having a pet.
I was left in agreement with Lucy, but I also remembered the amazing effects that the tortoises had on the young children's well-being. Whether pets are morally acceptable or not is a difficult debate. But one thing I do agree with her on is that there should be a blanket ban on the trade of Horsfield tortoises from abroad. Horsfield tortoises need to be protected in the wild, along with other threatened and endangered species that aren't considered cute or iconic enough for media attention or political action. International governments need to do more to put a ban on the trade of wild animals. Until that happens, perhaps the future of the Horsfield tortoise lies in Britain's back gardens. We've learned a lot about the Horsfield tortoise, from the different foods that they eat, to the fascinating behaviours they display, from the positive effects they can have on mental health, to the emotional roller coasters they can put us through. But most importantly, we've learned that they must be protected if we are to see them in our future.